You've decided you're going to install Linux on your computer. Yay! It's probably one of the best decisions you'll ever make, if I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, it probably isn't like up on the same level as accepting Jesus into your heart, but it is a really good decision. There are many reasons why someone would want to use Linux. So, here are 12 things that I think you should be thinking about before you ever decide to install a Linux distro on your computer. Let's get into it. So I think one of the first things is I think you need to have a plan, and I think you just need to figure out what it is exactly that you want to do with your computer, right? That's the first step. Like for me, I want to make dope videos. I want to record music. I want to have a really good, development system that works for me. And last but not least, I just want my computer to be something that I like to look at. That's not something I get from Windows or Mac. And so this is what I want. So I think the second thing that you're going to want to do, I think you're going to want to choose your distro wisely. Now, when you're talking about derivatives and things like that, I think when you're starting out in Linux, it's okay. Like if you wanted a derivative for Debian, you'd use Emacs. If you wanted a derivative for Fedora, you'd probably use Nobara. Ubuntu, you'd use Pop! OS. Arch, you'd probably use something like Arco Linux or something like this, right? That's perfectly fine. So when you get a little bit more experience behind your belt, you're going to want to kick the derivatives to the curb. You'll just use Debian, Ubuntu, Fedora, or Arch, or whatever it is that you're wanting to use. And you'll just kind of like do away with the derivatives, I think. And the one thing that I think you should do is if you're planning on installing Linux for the first time, have 3 distros as a backup plan, right? If like say MX Linux doesn't work, what is your backup plan? Like have 2 other backups so that you will be happy with whatever it is that you decide to install. So I think the third thing you're going to want to do is choose your window manager or your desktop environment. I think that just goes without saying. So I'm going to say something a little controversial here. I don't think you need a tiling window manager if you're not a developer, but I understand you might actually like using a tiling window manager, even if you're not a developer. I know I did, but not everyone's going to like using a tiling window manager, and some people are going to be just happy using the GNOME desktop. That wouldn't be me, of course. Some people are going to like using Plasma. To each their own, right? And so choose the desktop environment or the tiling window manager or window manager that you want to use. It's up to you. Like the sky is literally the limit. How much you want to configure, how much you want to things to work out of the box. This is all up to you with Linux. This is the beauty about Linux. I think the next one is pretty simple. You need to choose your color scheme, right? What are you going for? So you might be looking at the solarized color scheme or Dracula, or, there's, probably about 12 or 15 color schemes out there. Which one do you want? And then of course the next one is kind of follows that, right? Choose your themes, icons, and wallpaper to basically achieve that. Of course, number 6, decide what apps you want installed by default, right? For me personally, there's a short list that I always have. For example, I always have Ardour, GIMP, Kdenlive, NeoVim, OBS, Obsidian, and Vert Manager. These are the main things that I need to be able to do a lot of my work. Next, I think you need to decide where you want your apps to come from. I mean, do you want them to be sandbox apps like Snap or Flatpaks or App Images? Do you want them to be distro boxes? Do you want them to come from the package manager? There's a few things also that I always have installed from my package manager on anything that I'm using. Some of those would be like curl, git, wget, compiling software, containers like Docker and Podman, virtualization, and LSP servers. Now, most of my LSP servers actually will come from mason.nvim. I just have to have Node.js installed. However, every once in a while, I run into an LSP server that I actually have to install on my computer. The next thing you need to do is you need to choose your shell. Now, most Linux distros come with Bash by default, and for me, that's good enough. I use Bash personally, and I can just fly through the command line. I can navigate files quickly. I have no problems just using Bash, but some people they want to use other things like Fish Shell or something like this, and it's great if Fish Shell works for you or if ZSH works for you. That's great, but decide beforehand which shell you're going to go with. Now you can always experiment, and you can use like, for example, I mean, it's not that hard to change a shell. So if you did want to use ZSH or Fish for a while and try it out, it would be just fine. So the next thing you're going to want to do is to choose a terminal. Personally, I like Alacrity, I like Kitty, I like ST, and URXVT. Those are my favorite 4 terminals that I use in Linux. And I actually use all of them for different purposes, and I really enjoy using them. I have my own configurations for each and every one of those, and I just like how that works. So the next thing you're going to want to choose is your text editor, and I think it should be Vim based preferably. Don't use Nano. Just stay out of the habit of using Nano. You'll break your fingers because eventually you're going to have to use VI or Vim or NeoVim, and you're going to have to get used to the keyboard shortcuts. A couple other really popular, text editors might be Emacs or Helix. I think those are good text editors as well. And Emacs is way more than a text editor. So is NeoVim and Helix, but that's conversation for a different day. Then the next thing you're going to want to do, the 11th, is basically decide on conkeys and widgets to basically, add a little flair to your desktop. I think that's really important. Especially if you have like a lot of key bindings, this is a good way to have them showing at all times so that you can remember your key bindings, like especially if you're old like me and sometimes forget what your key bindings are or something like this. And of course, the last but not least, I think you're going to want to basically write Bash or Python scripts to basically fill in the blanks. Now you might say, I'm new to Linux. I'm probably not going to want to do this. Well, this is kind of a last resort. This is one of those things where, if certain things aren't working quite right, you're going to have to do a little digging, like to figure some things out. And you're going to have to write a few scripts to make this thing work the way you want. What if, like, your GPU isn't quite working quite right? You might have to make some alterations. This is kind of what I'm talking about. Or maybe like me, I like to have like my D menu scripts and things like that are really kick ass. There's a lot of things right there. Now, if you say I don't want to write a bash script, there's plenty of other alternatives, but eventually if you continue to use Linux, I think you're going to end up writing bash scripts at the very least. So, what are the things that you need when installing Linux? It's different for everybody, right? But most people kind of wing it, right? This is their approach. And they're sorely disappointed when things don't work out the way they want. They don't make any kind of plan. And don't get me wrong, I don't think you need to write it out on a piece of paper and have diagrams or something like that. You just need to have a visual of some sort to kind of understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then you just go and execute it. And it may take a couple of weeks or a couple of months to get the system that you want. but in the end, I think it can be very rewarding. Anyway, be sure to check out my latest video, or you could binge watch like all of my videos. Please don't. Anyway, have a great one. Later.